Astrobot may have just revealed the return of Rayman with a potential release before the end of the year, and I have a surprising amount of evidence to back up my case here, so let's start at the beginning. Not that one. Definitely not that one. Nearly there. Okay, here we go. In 2020, when the PS5 launched, it had a game pre-installed, Astro's Playroom. The 3D platformer made good use of not only the new console's power, but the innovative controller as well. It was truly a fantastic showcase for what the PS5 could do. It follows a bot, Astro, as he goes through a series of PS5 console part-themed levels to rescue other bots and collect coins, among other things. Throughout the game, you can unlock little collectibles in the form of nostalgic PlayStation memorabilia. In a way, Astro's Playroom was somewhat of a celebration and a commercial for not only the PS5 but the whole PlayStation brand. A commercial we all actively chose to play and enjoy a lot. In fact, Astro's Playroom is commonly cited as one of the best PS5 games. I mean, it's one of the only PS5 games, but a bloody good one nonetheless. It's a short game with a handful of levels, some collectibles and some speedruns added as free DLC, and that was meant to be it. However, due to the success of the game and the overall reception, of course, Sony wanted to capitalise and got Team Asobi to develop a full-fledged sequel. 4 years into the PS5's life and we have a second game. I'm sorry, that's not fair. We have a third game. Anyway, Astrobot released only a few weeks ago as of this video to overwhelming success, at least in terms of reception. As of right now, we don't really know how well it's selling, but there are rumours of it selling well, rumours of it not selling well, that may or may not be true, and I don't really care to find out because I've already spent way too long describing a game that's not even the focus of the video. Don't get me wrong, I loved Astrobot, it's just Rayman. The new PS5 exclusive platformer continued what was started with Astro's Playroom and took it to the max, in every way. There are an abundance of levels, power-ups, challenges, boss fights, bots to save, and of course, advertising. That's right, Astrobot dials up the PlayStation branding to 11, but not in an obtuse way, it's subtle. Well, not subtle, just tasteful, celebratory. The game celebrates PlayStation and all of the various first-party franchises associated with Sony. For the most part, this takes the form of rescuing bots designed after iconic, and in some cases rather obscure, underappreciated, PlayStation characters. I'm talking Crash Bandicoot, Leon Kennedy, that pill thing from Katamari. Everyone shows up, with some real deep cuts in there too, but we'll get to them. Additionally, there are a few levels based around other PlayStation exclusive games, including Ape Escape, Loco Roco, Uncharted, God of War, and Horizon Zero Dawn. It's hard not to look at this game as an enormous advert for the PlayStation brand. But what's this got to do with Rayman? Well, in the credits for Astrobot towards the end, there are some third-party games listed, games that had absolutely no presence in Astrobot. But before I get onto why this is actually a lot bigger than you might think, let's go back to Astro's Playroom. In the months leading up to the release of Astrobot, a few extra bots were added to Astro's Playroom for players to rescue while getting back into the game and getting excited for the sequel, all while a countdown appeared in the hub world. This seems innocent enough, in fact, it is incredibly player-friendly. However, at its core, Sony used Astro's Playroom to promote the sequel Astrobot, in the form of small DLC, essentially. Not a bad thing necessarily, but my point is Sony have previously advertised a game within an Astro game before, which is important here, remember that. This finally leads us to those extra games that were mentioned in the credits. Why are they there, and what does any of this have to do with what I've been talking about and what you presumably clicked on this video for? Well, the games listed in the credits are, in no particular order, Stellar Blade, Rise of the Ronin, Worms, Croc, Assassin's Creed, Beyond Good and Evil, and Rayman. Now you've got to bear with me on this because it's a tad convoluted, but I promise you there is weight behind this. Let's look at these games and work out exactly why these games are listed in the credits of Astrobot. I mean, I can tell you why they're there. It's because Team Asobi are working on some extra challenge levels and speedruns to release as free DLC in the coming months, and these characters will undoubtedly be associated with these new levels. It makes sense. New levels need new bots to rescue. But my question is why these games specifically? Well, let's take a look at Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin first. Both Sony published PS5 games. I know they'll both end up on PC at some point, but for all intents and purposes they are PlayStation franchises, just like God of War or The Last of Us. So why aren't they in Astrobot already? Well, they both released earlier this year, with Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin releasing just 5 and 6 months before Astro Bot respectively. Now if the quality of Astro Bot is anything to go by, the game was fundamentally done long ago, with months of testing and fine tuning in the build up to the release. So it's not outside the realm of possibility to suggest that every bot in the game was already accounted for before Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin released, or at least became prominent enough figures to be worthy of inclusion. Now if we know anything about AAA games, it's that unexpected delays should be expected. So it's understandable why Asobi didn't include characters from games that had the potential to release after their own game, or at least have not had enough time to have an impact warranting cameos in their game. Yet. But what better franchise to use in free DLC set to release months after the game? Considering these are two of the most recent PS5 games and neither one was included yet, it's really hard to deny that this is probably the reason why. So these PS5 games are going to be included in the PlayStation Celebratory game. Great, but what about the others? Because I've played Worms, Croc and Rayman on Sega consoles, and Beyond Good and Evil and Assassin's Creed on Xboxes. Surely they're out of place in a PlayStation exclusive Celebration game, no? Well, here's where it gets interesting, at least to me. With the 2 Sony games out of the way, we are left with 3 Ubisoft games, a Team 17 game and a Fox Interactive game. All of which, of course, have released on PlayStation consoles in the past, as well as others. But why these? Why not Call of Duty, or Just Cause, or Prince of Persia? So let's start with Assassin's Creed. Ubisoft's tremendously big franchise has, at its core, always released on PC, Xbox and PlayStation, whichever ones are the present consoles during release. Every now and then there is a marketing deal. For example, PS3 had some extra missions on Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and both PS3 and 4 had extra missions in Black Flag. But Assassin's Creed Origins was used as one of the biggest marketing draws when Microsoft revealed the Xbox One X, so it's a bit of a mix. But as of the other day, when the PS5 Pro was announced, for all its egregious faults, it highlighted something for me. Assassin's Creed Shadows, the new one, will be PS5 Pro enhanced, and both Ubisoft and Sony are marketing this. Now of course it could be Xbox Series Z enhanced when the time comes, but that's clearly not what's happening. What's happening is there's a little bit of a marketing deal between Ubisoft and Sony right now. It's happened before, it's happened with Microsoft, this is completely understandable. These things happen, whatever. But then I thought, Assassin's Creed Shadows is coming out in 2 months. Maybe they'll put the 2 new protagonists in Astro Bot as bots to rescue. It would make sense. A little promotion for the new game while also keeping Astro Bot in the limelight, a bit relevant by keeping up with the new releases. That's what I thought, but then I remembered Rayman and all the others, and I thought, well, you know, Rayman's never coming back, so why him, why now? But let's move on to Croc. Croc is such a strange franchise to think about. The first entry, Croc the Legend of the Gobbos, initially released on PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn and PC in 1997, and then a sequel a couple of years later on PS1 and a year after that on PC. And then a year after that there was a Game Boy Color release of the same name, but different game. So it's hardly a PlayStation franchise by any stretch of the imagination, and quite frankly with nothing but a Cad Icarus video since 2001, what? It's not really much of a franchise at all anymore. Certainly not one anyone would recognise or care about. That's right, Croc HD is on the way. A re-release of Croc Legend of the Gobbos is being worked on for release very soon, allegedly still aiming for a 2024 release. This could just be a coincidence of course, but let's humour the idea that maybe Astro Bot, a 3D platformer, would add a level featuring Croc to both celebrate and advertise the new release in the 3D platformer series that's been dead for nearly 23 years. Let's say I'm right on this part for now, just for argument's sake. So now we have Croc and Assassin's Creed both having releases fairly soon, and inclusions in Astro Bot, with Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin understandably being left out until after Astro Bot's release. But what about Worms? Yeah, I'm not going to waste your time with this one. Worms Armageddon Anniversary Edition comes out next week, and to be honest, after the train wreck launch of Worms Rumble 4 years ago, can you really blame Team 17 for maybe needing the help of a larger company in the midst of their own reputation being a bit marred? I would do the same, you know, it's free marketing. Probably. Maybe it cost a bit. I don't really care, that's not the point. Anyway, this is something. So now we have 3 external franchises with releases coming soon, but this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We are now left with 2 Ubisoft franchises, both famous for never getting a new game. I mean, God, Beyond Good and Evil, the greatest game ever made, by the way, came out 21 years ago, and despite numerous announcements and showcases and teasers and reconfirmations, it's yet to properly have a sequel release. It's such a forgotten about franchise, so I think my case falls apart here really, because there's no new Beyond Good and Evil release that Astrobot could possibly want to celebrate with this dead franchise.
Paige, you've been hiding this from me for the past 20 years.
Oh yeah, that'll do it. I know the recent Beyond Good and Evil remaster isn't upcoming, it's already out, but it came out after Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin, and what's more, it's already been subject to some hefty delays, hence the 20th anniversary edition launching in the second half of its 21st year. Thanks Ubisoft. Anyway, this is the same kind of situation as Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin. They run the risk of the game maybe coming out after Astrobot wanted to save it a little bit later, third party anyway, so maybe you don't want to use it in the main game. It's all lining up enough. And it's completely understandable for Ubisoft to want as much promotion and exposure as possible for a game that never really achieved mainstream success. Sure, it got a cult following and is regarded as a masterpiece by those who played it, but even in 2003 no one really did play it. It had an HD port on the Xbox 360 and PS3, but we'll get to that later. And even with that, it was never really the big hitter Ubisoft were hoping it would be, and with the sequel potentially, allegedly, maybe, almost definitely not coming out one day, of course they're going to want to raise a little bit of awareness and attention. So we can lump Beyond Good and Evil in with Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin, leaving us now, finally, with Rayman. Quite frankly, I don't know what to say here. There is nothing announced, nothing has been leaked, and nothing publicly being worked on. All I have is circumstantial evidence, and just enough of it to make it eerily likely that this could happen. All of the previous games I've talked about either had a release in 2024 or has an upcoming release in 2024. And in terms of the non-Sony published games, they're all a mix of really strange choices, with nothing connecting or explaining them other than a recent surge of relevancy with 2024 releases. So it's not really a stretch to say that maybe, just maybe, Rayman's the same and something's happening soon. So let's say I am right, and Rayman has got something happening soon, a surge of relevancy, a new release. What could it possibly be? Obviously not Rayman 4. I'm not insane, I'm just a little bit delusional. I do, however, think I know what they're going to release, and I think I can possibly hazard a guess as to when, so I'll go through what I think will happen. I don't think Ubisoft are working on a new Rayman game. I don't think they've made anything new or rebuilt anything from the ground up. I do think with the recent Rayman DLC in Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Ubisoft are more aware of him. Even his appearance in Captain Laserhawk and now the fully funded Rayman board game, there is more Rayman actually than there has been in a very long time. And the optimistic message at the end of the Mario & Rabbids DLC would suggest that the team at Ubisoft Milan, and specifically Davide Solani, the director, would push for a new Rayman entry. However, we all know it's not that easy, and now Davide has left Ubisoft, it's a little uncertain, let's say. But moving on, they have not made a new Rayman game. I think they've remastered one. Not a remake, but more or less the treatment Beyond Good and Evil got just this year. A fresh coat of paint and the odd extra bit of content. Side note, the Rabbids are officially their own franchise, so this Astrobot thing that includes the Rayman franchise is Rayman related, and it will not be another excuse for them to ram the Rabbids down our throats, thank God. That's a saving grace. Anyway, of the 5 mainline games, which one's getting remastered? To me, it's a simple answer. Rayman 1 would be remade. It's not getting remastered, it's not getting re-released, it simply doesn't hold up as a 2D platformer, and I know some people would disagree with me there, but in the current state of the gaming industry, it does not hold up in the way a 2D platformer needs to, or at least not in the way that Ubisoft wanted to in terms of attracting a new audience. It's incredibly hard, the controls are outdated, the graphics... Okay, they still look amazing, but my point is, there is no way this game is getting re-released on a major console. It's just not happening. Rayman Legends is easily available on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, the Xbox Series consoles, Nintendo Switch and PC. It would be like remaking Assassin's Creed Black Flag or something, while it's, you know, essentially still a modern game available on modern hardware. Oh yeah, god damn it Ubisoft. Either way, they're not re-releasing Rayman Legends. Again, they're also not releasing Rayman Origins again. That will forever be the forgotten child of the 5 mainline games. Most of it's built into Rayman Legends, which for the most part people prefer, I believe. If I'm honest, I actually prefer Rayman Origins a little bit. It's very, very close. Either way, that game is never seeing a re-release. It's just not the right kind of entry to get a re-release. So we're left with Rayman 2, the best one in the series, and Rayman 3, arguably the most iconic and popular one in the series. It's Rayman 3, obviously. While Rayman 2 puts Skyrim to shame with the amount of ports it has, it is fundamentally outdated and is far more likely to be subject to a full-fledged remake rather than a remaster. Well, it is having a remake, but not by Ubisoft. New Dawn Games are making a faithful Rayman 2 HD fan game and it looks amazing, but I've already established that Ubisoft will not be remaking anything from scratch, at least not yet. And to re-release their original 1999 game on modern hardware, that's also just not happening. It's a little bit too outdated, the graphics are not as good as people remember them, at least not in the way that modern audiences would like. It's not going to be Rayman 2 as much as that upsets me. Rayman 3 is more marketable, more accessible, more popular, it holds up extremely well and it is going to get a re-release sooner or later, and I truly think that this year it's going to be the year it happens. It already had an HD port with Beyond Good and Evil on PS3 and Xbox 360 in the early 2010s, and it's well timed for another. And like Beyond Good and Evil, it's been 20 years. In fact, it's nearly Rayman's 30th anniversary. It would be nice if maybe they did something for that. But seriously, it cannot be understated how well it fits for Rayman to be having some kind of surge in attention, given the other franchises listed in Astrobot's credits all having something in 2024. With some being the first in 23 years, it would just be extremely odd for Rayman to be the only one with nothing on the horizon. And after the release of Beyond Good and Evil's 20th anniversary, it's not hard to imagine that Ubisoft would do a similar release for another of their dying franchises. Prince of Persia's been having a lot of attention recently with a couple of new games and the remake restarting, maybe? They've remade the remake? I don't know. Splinter Cell's getting a remake or a sequel or a redo, I don't know, something. Also, potentially, it's not. Assassin's Creed Black Flag's getting a remake. Assassin's Creed 1, realistically, let's be honest, is definitely getting a remake. So remaking a Rayman or remastering a Rayman is not out of the question. Is he really going to be the odd one out here? Because after so long of having that answer be yes, I don't think it will be this time. Regarding the game's release, I have a theory, but it's not a great one. Beyond Good and Evil got officially, properly announced just 5 days before its release. Now I know it got leaked a few times and Ubisoft had to announce it on Twitter early, but if it all had gone according to plan, it would have been a quick and quiet release. So the fact we've heard nothing about Rayman means they could still drop it at any time. Ubisoft are showcasing at the Tokyo Game Show later in September, though this will probably be focused mainly on Assassin's Creed Shadows. I do, however, think Worms Armageddon and the Astrobot DLC for Worms Armageddon will be shown at the next PlayStation State of Play, which is potentially the end of September, so maybe Rayman could show up there as well, or at the Ubisoft showcase in Tokyo. Otherwise, they could just drop an announcement and release it anytime this year, or even early next year. If I had to guess, I would think late October or early December are the most likely times, but realistically it could be whenever. You never know what Ubisoft are going to do. If I'm wrong, I will eat my words and be happy with whatever inclusion Rayman has in Astrobot, but if I'm right with this ridiculous shot in the dark based solely on the games and actions surrounding it, and Rayman actually has a release in the coming months relating to Astrobot, I will be mind blown, and quite frankly I want this video out there so I can prove I was right about this before anyone else. I did correctly predict Beyond Good and Evil's remastered trailer before it happened. I knew the day it was coming. I knew the day of release, so maybe I can do it again. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm not going to make another one of these. I'm a busy man. Well, if I'm right, then I'm probably going to make one and gloat. It's time he came back, so if you have watched this and you haven't played Rayman, go and do it. Because if I'm wrong, maybe it'll encourage Ubisoft to make me right. Make Rayman 4. Do it.